persuade the Trump administration to step up the fight against the Taliban. The urgency came after a secret British Army unit discovered the Taliban is sheltering al-Qaeda and ISIS fighters and has established itself in every province and main town in Afghanistan. Larry Miller, CBS News, London.
Even as President Trump is gearing up for a fight over money for his border wall, we learn that smugglers are finding other ways to get people into the U.S. illegally. Authorities in California found a huge crude tunnel that carried dozens of people from Mexico to the U.S. near San Diego's border crossing. Agents detained about 24 Chinese nationals and Mexican citizens who were seen in the area. Pam Coulter, CBS News.
Good afternoon. You're listening to AM 1080 KSCO Santa Cruz, KSCO.com, 205 on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Hope everyone's doing good. I'm Jason Struby. Let's get a look at the traffic report of a fire on Ice Cream Grade Road. Came in just a couple minutes ago from CHP. Looks like actually just a smoke investigation right now. We'll keep you updated. Bonnie Doon area. Hit and run reported at 152, 101 northbound at the 156 connector. And a traffic hazard reported from Highway 1 northbound at Soquel from CHP. Looks like a bicycle involved there. Watch out for that. Collision 41st at Soquel. No injuries at 139. And at 109, a collision 101 southbound at Cannon. It's 2:06. Time for the Planet Watch radio show with your hosts, Rachel Goodman and Joe Jordan on KSCO.
Welcome to Planet Watch, big solutions to Earth-size problems. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman.
And I'm Joe Jordan.
Hey, Joe Jordan. Welcome back from Points Beyond.
And you too.
It's good to be live again, and live is better than the other kind of radio. Today on the program, what youth, meaning broadly defined people over 18, are doing about climate change. From fossil fuel divestment movements to organizing coalitions to fight climate change, they are on the move. We'll talk with one youth organizer who has had major successes getting her university and others to stop investing in fossil fuels. And we'll hear from our interns who are in their 20s about perspectives on their futures, and that plus some eclipse, post-eclipse, armchair, quarterbacking, Monday morning quarterbacking, Sunday afternoon quarterbacking here on Planet Watch. And if you'd like to join us or ask a question of our guest, the best way to do that is to email us at radioplanetwatch@gmail.com. Again, that's radioplanetwatch@gmail.com. We're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, and we will have a video of this show up on our Facebook page, Radio Planet Watch, right after the show. So stay tuned. If you missed some of this, you can go back and see our special eclipse glasses. There we go. How those look? I can't see a thing.
Rachel can't see anything now.
Nothing. Yeah. No, because the sun's not out. So we've got some news stories for you, as we usually do, beginning the show. And a lot going on. I think we'll start out with Tommy's story, which has an upbeat future for it, for California anyway, and maybe other states will copy that.
Yeah, hopefully. Out of 26 million registered cars, 300,000 electric vehicles may sound like a drop in the bucket, but California is trying to boost that number to fight pollution and reduce carbon emissions. A bill introduced by San Francisco Assemblyman Phil Ting looks to expand the electric vehicle rebate program to incentivize California car buyers to go electric. If approved by the full legislature before the end of its current session on September 15th, the bill will head to Governor Jerry Brown's desk. If enacted, the bill could increase rebates by thousands, drastically reducing the cost of electric vehicles. The state rebate under the plan would rise from $2,500 to around $10,000. The bill would also continue the state's Cash for Clunkers program, which pays around $1,500 to get qualified high-pollution vehicles off the road. Governor Brown has set a goal to have 1.5 million electric vehicles on the road by 2025, which may push him to approve the bill.
All right, that's time for some math now. What percentage of 26 million is 300,000?
Well, it's a third of 1 million, so
Like 3%?
It's a little, yeah, it's a little over 1%. But
Oh.
you know, that target you just mentioned, getting 1.5 million on the road by 2025, I am betting we will far exceed that.
Hopefully
Quite
with
relatively
moves like
soon.
this.
Yeah.
Well, good. Go Tesla. Go electric.
Oh yeah,
bike.
Tesla has even higher expectations too for some of their sales of their new car.
Great. I wish the price would come down. Just
Yeah.
personally speaking.
Well, they're
You know.
trying to help.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that does help. It helped me put solar on my house. Those
Right.
rebates make a huge difference.
That's what they were saying. They were modeling it after. It was the solar program.
Yeah, great. I'd love to see that. And I'm sure, electric car producers would also love to see that as
Yeah.
well, because more people buy them.
And more car companies are producing more electric cars now too.
Yeah, Tesla's not going to be the only game in town. By the way, on this rebate and subsidy thing, the real purpose of that, of course, it's not a free market thing, but where appropriate, you tweak the free market by helping things that everybody agrees are good, or many or most people agree are good, and then you phase out that help as time goes on and return to more free market conditions after somebody hit, all of the big industries of the world, the computer industry, the aircraft industry, they got their big break from government subsidies.
The
People
internet.
need to be aware of this. Yeah.
Well, and why don't they stop subsidizing fossil fuel companies? I don't get it. They don't need
They already
those.
got their big break.
That's
big
right.
time.
Where's the finger coming off the scale there? Well, it has become a disturbingly familiar scene, and if you've been watching cable news any time in the past 24 hours, you've seen helicopters rescuing people from their rooftops in catastrophic flooding, this time in Texas. As Harvey causes mayhem there, scientists are being asked again whether hurricanes like Harvey can be attributed to climate change, or climate change causing them directly. In the past, scientists have not had a very definitive answer, but now new modeling methods are allowing them to narrow their accuracy of the assessments of that connection. The World Weather Attribution Group, a group of scientists formed in 2014, are developing a series of steps that they have worked out to perfect for these case studies. The team uses models from NOAA that had already run that could be analyzed easily. They took a look at weather conditions with man-made climate change and without. Then they run these repeated simulations to try to match the actual event, which gives a high-confidence model to assess how likely that event is to have occurred in a given year with or without climate change. The likelihood of an extreme precipitation event has increased over the past century alongside carbon dioxide emissions. In the case of Louisiana, it increased 40%. Still, scientists have yet to identify a specific weather event that otherwise would not have happened except for global warming. Extreme weather events that involve extreme heat or flooding are easier for them to assess than more complicated extreme weather events like hurricanes. That being said, scientists agree that the flooding from hurricanes like Harvey will be greater due to warmer ocean temperatures, delivering more rain. In other words, not necessarily more frequent, they don't know that yet, but they do know more intense. Harvey is expected to deliver nearly 40 inches of rain in some areas, which apparently 5 inches an hour is what's happening there now. So hard to fathom and something to really pay attention to, and maybe will change the minds of people after all, like it did after Sandy. It's supposed to be worse than Katrina for some people. So, yeah, a lot going on that part of the world.
Yeah, an inch of rain is actually a lot. And, 40 inches of rain, more than 3 feet of rain in a couple of days, that's, biblical.
It's expected to stall out over Houston and places like that, and then go around the ocean, pick up more, the Gulf, and pick up more moisture and dump it.
One extreme weather event that's been going on, we might as well mention it. It's in Europe, and they actually have dubbed it Lucifer. It's 110 plus degrees Fahrenheit in Europe, which is a fairly northerly area. And the basic fundamental concept here about the oceans and hurricanes is that the more energy you put into the atmosphere by having excessive greenhouse gases, then all kinds of extremes occur. Floods, fires, heat, cold, all over the map. So it's a matter of more energy being trapped in the lower atmosphere by these, carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases such as methane and so on.
All right, on that note, let's go to another more localized story, but it could have implications for other legislatures around the country.
Republican leader of the California State Assembly, Chad Mays, was forced to resign after voting to extend California's emission reduction program, Cap and Trade. Mays faced weeks of pressure from conservative Republicans after siding with Governor Jerry Brown and Democratic legislators. Majority of Republicans strongly oppose the program, which requires companies to buy permits to emit greenhouse gases, calling it a tax increase on consumers. They have criticized the decision for being economically damaging and against party orthodox.
Wow. So punish the person trying to cross the aisle. Well, California's Republican Party is pretty marginalized as it is, and this may spell further marginalization because they're not trying to be bipartisan in these things, unfortunately. So we have a guest online. She is Varshini Prakash. She is a 24-year-old UMass graduate, and it was there that she got started in the climate movement, running a fossil fuel divestment campaign. This campaign, after lots of organizing, eventually won in 2016. From there, she worked with national organizations, coaching students to run divestment campaigns all across the country. And in the fall of 2015, she embarked on a strategic planning process with 12 others to figure out a strategy that would breed a new kind of climate movement, one that could go to scale, that would combine people power and political power into one force that could speak to people through values and story. She is part of Sunrise, which is born out of that planning process, and she's been working on it since April, and we have her here by phone, and we also have our interns, which we're excited to include in this conversation. Hi, Varshini. Thank you for being with us here on Planet Watch.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. So I want to start out with a general question and turn it over to the people in their 20s who will live long past us, people who have been here, for the past 50 or so years. And I wanted to ask you what the general mood is among youth activists. What are they feeling about the climate change issue, about their ability to move the dial on it, to have an influence?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that people are feeling right now is a lot of pain and a lot of fear around what the future will look like, and also a lot of energy and a feeling of being galvanized. And I think the biggest thing I saw come out of this most recent election, going back even before Trump was elected, was that while Trump was gaining in popularity in this country, so was Bernie Sanders. And we saw hundreds of thousands of young people being so excited about a big vision for America, one that could work for all of us, that would create a stable economy, that would create a livable planet, that would treat all people the same, and create a world that was more equitable and just. And I have been so inspired seeing that and seeing so many young people come out of the woodwork. And I think, as we've seen in this most recent election, young people are also ready to fight back. I've seen more people reaching out and talking to each other, asking, what can we do? How can we get involved? What is the thing that I can do in my own community to stop this hate and the violence that's happening? And what can I do to actually create a better future for myself and for my families and for the generations that come after me? And I think this has permeated all levels of social issues and through everything, but definitely is part of the climate movement as well. And we have seen a huge uptick in people wanting to participate and being excited to participate.
That's fantastic. Is there any sense for how big it is? I mean, has anyone ever tried to quantify the number of youth that have gotten out there since even this November election in this country?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I know those exact numbers, but something that I do know about young people and climate and renewable energy and our future is that young people in droves are so excited about renewable energy. Something like 91% of millennials actually support a transition to 100% renewable energy by 2050. And young people there was actually a poll that came out recently that looked at the number of people who would be willing to engage in some sort of action to stop climate change and protect our future. And it was something like 1 in 8 were willing to do that. And if we translate that to the American public, that's 38 million people. So I think there's so many folks out there, and definitely young people have always been at the forefront of social movement. So there's definitely a disproportionate number of young people who are ready and willing to do something. They're just waiting to be asked and waiting to be brought in.
That's fantastic. I'd like to introduce Tommy. He's an intern. He's a Cabrillo College journalism student, and he's been helping us out on Planet Watch. And he's very involved in lots of things, too, and had some questions for you.
Yeah, hi. I have
Hi,
some,
Tommy.
Hi, Varshini. I have some more statistics, actually. Those were really interesting statistics that you just presented. I have some more about American youth who are apparently unhappy with the condition of the environment and lack faith in adults to address it. A majority of American youth, 51%, rate the condition of the environment and nature as an extremely or very serious problem, and they place blame squarely on previous generations. Nearly 3/4 agree that the previous generations have damaged our environment and left it to our generation to fix it. Youth lack faith in government to address this, and only 1/3 believe government leaders are doing enough to address this problem.
So I'd like to ask you, Varshini, what you think about the last part, because this is reflected in a lot of polls that people are losing faith in their democratic institutions to solve these problems. Does that mean they're just not going to engage in the electoral process? And how about your group? Are you engaged in not saying that government is broken, we can't fix it, we'll go somewhere else? Are you saying government's broken, we can fix it?
Yes, absolutely. So a core tenet of Sunrise, the way that we talk about Sunrise is that Sunrise is a movement to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. And how we get there is to make climate change an urgent priority across America, to end the influence of wealthy fossil fuel CEOs on our politics, and elect leaders who will actually stand up for the health and well-being of all people. And we employed two specific strategies to actually make that happen. Number one is creating a lot of people power, and that means sort of an active, large, vocal base of public support. And the second one is political power, which is creating a critical mass of enthusiastically supportive public officials who are going the mile, who are fighting for climate legislation, who are talking about climate change on the floor every single day, and who are organizing their colleagues to join them in that battle. And we think that these two ingredients are completely essential to actually fighting the climate crisis. And we've seen the dangers of either doing one of these things and not the other many, many times in the past. And that if we are consistently on the outside as people railing against a government that is not by us and for us and does not feel any type of accountability or responsibility towards us and doesn't share our values, we're not going to gain much ground. And as we've seen, a lot of the victories that we had in the Obama years were were pulled back so quickly after Donald Trump got into office. So actually what we think is a recipe for success is to do the work, go to the rallies, join the protests, vote, donate, support in all the ways possible, and to also use the power that we have as people to elect leaders who will be true climate champions, and to unseat people who have been bought off by the fossil fuel industry CEOs, the people who are accountable to their corporate donors and not to the people that they're supposed to represent. So we actually think there's a lot of hope in this moment, that people are waking up, they are upset about the way that this country is moving forward, and they're saying, wow, I can be a part of this revolution to create and make real the promise of an America for all of us. And we are encouraging people to get involved in the political process, because what politics looks like in America today is not what it will look like 10, even 4 years from now, if the number of people who actually feel passionate about this issue and so many others get involved and shift what it looks like shift what the political landscape actually looks like and who represents us in office.
Let's certainly hope so. Maybe it's 2 months from now. Caroline,
I would hope so.
Caroline King is with us here. She's also an intern. She's also in her 20s. Actually, she's not even yet in her 20s. She's our youngest member of our group here, and just into journalism, has some questions about the whole moment that you described that we're in, and how that's affecting. And so, Caroline, this is Caroline King.
Hello.
Hi.
Nice to talk with you. I just wanted to address kind of the political aspect that you were just talking about, mostly about how you guys hold politicians accountable and how you see results from your effort in doing so.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we've been doing this past month has been, while our senators and Congress people have been home from Washington on August recess, some of them have been holding town halls. And we have been going to these town halls, and if they haven't been holding public town halls, fundraising our way into private fundraisers to ask them the hard questions about how they've either been in bed with the fossil fuel industry and how they're taking campaign contributions, and why that is when the future and the lives of millions is at stake, and also pushing people who have been on our side to take real bold action by taking like the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge, which asks politicians to refuse donations from oil, gas, and coal CEOs and stand on the side of healthy families, climate, and democracy. So we've been doing that over the last month, and it's been incredible to see so many young people showing up to these town halls, delivering powerful statements about what this crisis means for young people and what we want our elected representatives to do, and shining a light on people like Marco Rubio, who take $750,000 from fossil fuel CEOs and don't hold public town halls because he, quote, believes people get rude and stupid. And those are not the people who should represent us. We should be electing people who care about people being able to drink fresh water and breathe clean air and live lives free from violence. And that is the kind of world we want to create. So those are the types of politicians we need to elect.
Wonderful. I saw the video of one of your representatives going to the Marco Rubio town hall, and it was so inspiring. She just spoke with such assertiveness and fearlessness. It was amazing.
Yes, she's awesome.
I watched that same video, and I'll just point out to the folks listening who may not have seen it that Marco Rubio gave the standard, it's the response now that's all the rage among the so-called conservatives. Oh, yeah, I believe in climate change. Climate is always changing, which is true, and it's an easy, facile way out. The point, dude, is that, yeah, it's always changing, but we are now accelerating that change big time in unnatural, unhealthy ways that are beginning to dwarf the natural changes. And we can't let these people off. I didn't see what happened after he said that. The video cut off, but anyway, yeah. So, and by the way, hi, Varshini. Nice to talk with you. We'll look forward to meeting you sometime out here in between or back there or all of the above. Getting involved.
Yes. Nice to meet you as well.
I was actually impressed by something I read. I think you had said it. It was near the end of an article I just read this morning, actually. And it said, well, we've found that the way to really engage people is to talk about people and their lives rather than just carbon inanimate things, which I totally agree with. There's all this stuff about climate change, which is, this abstract concept almost. It doesn't, you got to really color in the details, like what's going on in Texas right now. And although I have to say, I've heard you presenting this movement as something about, youth doing something about climate change. Well, there it is again. So that's a little bit of a challenge to all of us, is how do we frame this in a way that many more people are really going to relate to and be able to dig into from a personal perspective.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's fine to say the words climate change and talk about it. I think we need to be doing that. I think what we've done over the last decade or so that really isn't working is talking about the crisis in terms of carbon, in terms of parts per million. And when we look at what actually inspires and motivates people to act, it's not about an element or, like scientific numbers or whatnot. I think that has motivated a decent number of people, but it's definitely not going to motivate everybody that we need to actually solve this crisis. And so what we need to be talking about is values. We need to be talking about equity and justice, people's ability to, as I said before, do very, very simple things like just have fresh water and clean air, which is not a reality for a lot of people. To be able to live their lives free from drought and famine and from, storm surges and from extreme weather events like what we're seeing in Texas right now. And it is like those are the stories that we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about how communities of color and low-income communities are so disparately impacted by the climate crisis. We need to be talking about people's stories and what's bringing them to this, to take action more so than just the science. Because I think at this point, I know that public opinion is on our side. I know that there are literally millions of people out there who are ready to take action. It's just a matter of motivating them to do so. And also, another thing that I would add just briefly about how to make this crisis, how to translate the sort of support that we have right now into action, is that people aren't really feeling the urgency of the crisis right now, right? Like there was this interesting New York Times Stanford poll that came out that asked people what they cared about most right now. And climate and environment was almost all the way at the bottom of the list. And at the top, you had jobs, economy, all of that, which you would expect. But when this same poll asked people, what do you care about most 30 years from now, the number one thing that people answered, the same group of people, was climate and environment. And that shows that people are actually concerned about this issue, but they're not concerned about it in this moment. And I will say that like Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Katrina, all the droughts that we're seeing across the world. My own family is from a place in India called Chennai, which experienced horrible, horrible flooding about a year and a half ago. That if my family had been there at the time, would have left them stranded without food and water and electricity for days, right? This is not an issue of, 30 years from now. This is not even an issue of 1 year, 2 years from now. This is right now, and we need to really bring that urgency and tell the story about how it's impacting people right this minute.
I'm speaking with Varshini Prakash. She is a movement director. I probably got your title wrong, from the Sunrise Movement. We'll be right back after this short break with more of that interview plus some video audio. Stay tuned. This is Planet Watch.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Costa, host of the Costa Report. If you're a regular listener of my program, then you know I'm deeply concerned at how fast our world is changing and how quickly we have to adapt. To help us manage that fast pace of change, I've spelled out 12 simple principles in my new book titled On the Verge. That's On the Verge, available at Amazon and fine bookstores everywhere. By learning how organisms in nature weather drastic change, you can also be prepared for whatever comes next. Whether you're an executive, a small business owner, or retired, I want you to get a copy of On the Verge and learn the secrets of predaptation. Because when you do, you're guaranteed to get the jump on what lies ahead. Be prepared for whatever comes next. That's On the Verge, available at Amazon and fine bookstores everywhere. Get your copy today. That's On the Verge.
And we're back with Planet Watch. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman.
And I'm Joe Jordan.
And here with Tommy Martin and Caroline King. And on the phone with us is Varshini Prakash. She is with the Sunrise Movement, a coalition of youth groups that are working to not only divest in fossil fuels around the country, but also successfully lobby for representatives that will do something about the climate crisis. And one of the things they do is they show up at town hall meetings, and I think I have the audio for that I'm going to play with for you just briefly, see if it comes up. Is it playing after all? Well,
what you're trying to play is one of the representatives or one of the people involved with the Sunrise Movement.
Well, she asked, why did you
person.
take $50 million from the fossil fuel industry? And of course, she got no answer. But we're very glad that Varshini is with us. Thanks for joining us from Boston. So glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
So my interns are here still, and they'd like to ask you some more questions, and we'll just continue on for at least the next 15 minutes or so. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. Again, we're talking about youth activism in the era of climate change and governments taking big bucks from fossil fuel companies. Not only are they taking, but inside the U.S. government is Rex Tillerson, the former CEO of Exxon. So it's like, it used to be the lobbyists influence the legislators. Now they are inside the White House, and that's a new thing. Maybe it just looks new, but anyway, do you guys have?
Yeah, I was wondering. Hi, Varshini again.
Hi, Tommy.
I was just wondering if you said that you were immediately or initially focused on divestment or fossil fuel divestment, and I was just wondering how far-reaching that at least that you're still involved in that, and how far-reaching the Sunrise Movement is all over the country. Like, where do you guys, how what's your range, I guess?
And how do we plug in, by the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a national movement all across this country. We launched about 4 months ago at the People's Climate March in Washington, D.C. So we have been active for only a short while, but just in that time, we've seen dozens of local hubs pop up. Hubs are like the primary way that you can participate in the movement. And we've seen dozens of hubs pop up. We've had so many of these shine a light on political corruption events that we just talked about, where we go into public town halls and demand answers from our representatives. And we have had, we've trained over 300 people, both online and at in-person orientation trainings in over 6 or 7 cities across the country already. So just in the 2 to 3 months since launch, we've accomplished all of that. And we're working at the national level, but all of our work really happens through local hubs, and that is the main way that people participate in the movement. So if you want to get involved in Sunrise Movement, I would go to sunrisemovement.org and click on Join Us and put your name and number in there, and we are going to get in touch with you about how you can get involved. We run online orientations for people so they can come meet other young people, not just students, youth activists from across the country who are also plugging in, kind of understand the scope and scale and some of the principles and the strategy and the plan and the story of the movement, and then have everything you need to get started to build out your own local hub. So right now in California, I believe there's a couple hubs. They might be more located around Oakland, but anybody is able to just sign on to sunrisemovement.org and join us and either start a local hub, participate in a local hub, get online training in order to participate in the movement. And we have a really exciting fall coming up where we will be taking action during the COP negotiations, the climate negotiations that are taking place in Germany, November 3rd through November 17th in Bonn, Germany. So definitely keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Hi, Varsh. I'm sorry, I don't want to pronounce it wrong. I'm just going to say hello.
That's okay. It's Varshini.
I had another question regarding the article that you guys were interviewed on, or you personally were actually interviewed in, on waging nonviolence.
Yeah.
And it's back kind of to the political lens of this whole issue. I'm just wondering how you get people to become aware of how the fossil fuel executives are infringing on our democratic rights and values of our government, and how you get people to see this without being discouraged or become really gloomy about the whole issue. How do you motivate them in the way where they see the whole scope of the issue, but without wanting to just turn away from it?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I think one of the biggest things is that people don't even know that the industry has had this level of influence on our politics. That's something that we have found to be really scary, but also that people just don't know about that right now, right? Like the wildest thing is that the fossil fuel industry actually had some of the best climate science dating back to probably before this, but in 1978 when actually there are internal ExxonMobil documents stating how the world will need to make drastic changes in the next 5 to 10 years to avert the climate crisis. And then we have internal documents almost 20 years later saying that, with ExxonMobil CEO Lee Raymond saying that we actually don't need to take any action and we can wait another 20 years before we even consider this crisis. So we've seen how the fossil fuel industry actually has had a decades-long deliberate strategy to protect their profits that's involved buying out politicians, deceiving the public, and sowing confusion and denialism about climate change. And as you just pointed out, Rachel, about actually consolidating their power in government, where we see ex-ExxonMobil CEO as Secretary of State. We have Scott Pruitt. We have all these former fossil fuel industry people who are now in government. So we've seen that real consolidation of power. And I think what gives people hope when they see such adversity or they see such corruption politically is, first of all, getting out there and even talking to people. This sounds almost too simplistic, but I think one of the things that we do the least because it involves taking a risk, because it's a little scary, because we're not sure what the outcome will be, is that a lot of us actually keep quiet about the climate change. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about it with our neighbors, with our friends, with our family members, and we particularly don't talk about it with people who disagree with us. And in that end, nobody talks about climate change. If you noticed in the last presidential election, the number of times that climate change was even mentioned was, I think climate and environment in total made up 2% of the total talking time that happened in the entire 2016 election cycle. That is wild. So I think one of the biggest things is just getting out there, talking to people, spreading the word about how we're both stopping climate change. And the second part is that we actually have a plan to do it. So Sunrise has a 4-year plan through the 2020 elections that is combining people power and political power into one potent force. And our goal is to make 2020 the year when it is no longer viable for a political candidate to accept campaign contributions from fossil fuel CEOs. And that is a big vision. That is something that people can't even imagine living. That is a reality that people cannot even imagine right now. And our job is to paint that picture, to paint a vision that's big enough and to show that, yes, we do actually have a viable path to getting there. And look at all these incredible people who are going to do it with you, and showing people the movement taking action every single day. Like you said before this, Caroline, that you felt really inspired when you saw September's question that she asked during the Marco Rubio fundraiser. So every person who sees September do that and thinks, wow, she's 19, I'm 19, I could do that. That is a win for the movement, and that is how we bring more people in.
I have another question for you, Varshini. There are other organizations doing similar things. In that same article Caroline referred to, I enjoyed seeing where it said that you folks are going beyond creative protest. And that's what I have often thought of, say, 350.org. They put on great protests, but I don't know how involved they are in actually winning elections. Maybe that I'm getting at the question here: how are you different from that, from the Bernie Sanders organization and Our Revolution, and things like Indivisible? I'm sure you know about all these things. And are you is your main new different focus that people can plug into without being burnt out on being involved in all kinds of different causes? That you're election focused? I mean, if so, I actually am encouraged, because we definitely need to win this 2018 election that's just around the corner next year. But tell about those other organizations and your relationships with them.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the ways, yes, you hit the nail on the head. One of the ways that we think, one of the niches that we occupy in the movement, I guess you could call it ecosystem, is really combining the people power and the political power. So being, actually taking the creative protest element, which I think is really, really important and critical, and translating that people power that's generated into a political force that can actually win elections and institutionalize our wins for the longer term. So as I said before, it's not good enough, right, to just be railing against an antagonistic government and antagonistic representatives and congresspeople and senators. It's not good enough to be just yelling from the outside. We need to have our people on the inside who are responsive and accountable to us. So that is one of the biggest ways, I think, that distinguishes us. And another way is that we are really excited about organizing at scale, and at the same time are thinking a lot about what it means to have good culture and to have good culture and to be creating welcoming spaces for all people to join. I think one of the biggest mistakes we've made as, whatever you want to call it, progressives, the left, whatever, is that we've created we've created an identity that doesn't allow other people to join us readily, and created a culture that has led to people feeling shame or people feeling scared to participate because they don't have the right language, or they don't have enough know-how, or they don't have the right words or the right education or whatnot. And we want to break all of those barriers down, because if you have to have a certain level of knowledge or understanding or feel like you have to be some type of person or exhibit some type of culture in order to participate in the movement, we will not have enough people such that we can actually go up against these wealthy fossil fuel CEOs who are raking in billions every year, right? So that's one of the other things I think that distinguishes us. And it is, I think, pretty unique to have a youth-based movement. So something that we've seen in history is that movements, many social movements, have been led and moved forward by young people. Young people are such a critical, potent force for good in this world. And we didn't see a place where young people could call their political home, where they could come together and organize and fight for the future that we all need. So we really wanted to create a movement that could be led by young people, that could bring in all types of people, but that would be making sure to create this a protagonist of the young person fighting for their future.
Well, we're so glad you did it, and we're just so happy to have you on the program, and want to appreciate your time today for coming on the show and sharing with us all the work you're doing. And again, we're going to post your website on our Facebook, and hopefully you can share our show with people who want to learn more about the Sunrise Movement.
And I should also mention again that the way people can get in touch with us here today and in between shows and with our guest, Varshini, anytime, is radioplanetwatch@gmail.com. Just email us there, and if you have questions for Varshini, we can pass them on. And so hopefully, Varshini, will be having a continuing interaction in the coming weeks and months.
Indeed.
And I would love to.
Yes, and I hope you'll keep us posted on what you're doing. Thank you so much for being here with us on Planet Watch.
Enjoy the rest of the day out there.
Thank you so much for having me.
All righty.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This is Planet Watch. You're listening to with Rachel Ann Goodman and Joe Jordan, along with Tommy Martin and Caroline King. We'll be talking about the youth part of the climate movement and fossil fuel divestment movement. And I have to say that there's been some successes here in our state of California with the UC taking a hard look at this. There's been some movement along that line. There's also been some movement in the child's lawsuit, Juliana versus U.S. climate lawsuit.
Our Children's Trust.
Yeah. So you can learn more about that. That's a lawsuit brought by young people saying that their future has been robbed from them. So we'll be watching that, and we'd like to get some of the people involved with that lawsuit on this show. So if anyone listening has connection to that organization, we'll try to bring that to you in the next weeks to come.
Yeah, and so now I think it's time to switch gears into some cosmic relief. And Rachel's modeling the eclipse glasses again.
It's dark in here, that's all I can say.
Before we get on to some short stories of our eclipse experiences, and in fact, it turns out I ended up talking Tommy into going into the path of totality, which he originally was not going to do. And it was eminently worth it for him.
Oh, yeah.
But there is a potentially earth-shaking class event that is about to happen. I mean, it's not really going to do any damage, but it's an object. It came from outer space, and it's actually been here before, and it's going to be coming back, and it kind of varies in how close it gets to the Earth every time it comes around. And this time, it's going to be so big and so close that you might be able to see it in binoculars. It's a big rock out there that's going to come make its closest approach to the Earth about 5:06 a.m. California time on this Friday, September 1st. But no, you don't have to get up at 5 a.m. You can see it tonight, maybe, with binoculars. If you really know what you're doing, you got to get a pretty good detailed star map and see where all the specks are supposed to be, and then you find the one that's not supposed to be there, and you watch it move over a period of 10 or 15 minutes. I'm going to be trying this every clear night from now until, after next Friday. It's not going to be all that close to us. It's going to come by at about 18 times the distance to the moon. But it's a rock that's about 3 miles across, and it's relatively reflective. And so it's kind of exciting. And so...
no deep impact, though.
Right. No
saw
threats.
That movie?
Yeah. No threats now, but... It came by similarly close, or even closer, back in 1890, and I don't know how many years it is between close approaches, but hopefully this will ignite some more interest. And I always say a good use of funding, government funding, would be for astronomy, just to detect what's out there in the shooting gallery out there. There is a shooting gallery out there in near space of rocks that every now and then come around and come by, and we need to know when they're coming and catch the really bad ones, namely the long period comets that come from, the far frosty fringes beyond our solar system, and they come in one time. And if they happen to be on course for us, we need to discover them before they're about as close as Jupiter, or it's too late. So then the question is, what do you do with them anyway? Do you send a nuclear projectile out there and blow it up? No, because then you have a whole lot of things all coming towards you.
You did watch that movie. It didn't go so well. It split into two. They actually flew up there, and they tried to blow it up, and
Yeah, the best solution, there's a fellow that used to run the Space Science Division over at NASA Ames, a guy named David Morris, and he'd be a good guy to have on an interview, by the way. And he told about how a nuclear standoff explosion, where you blow something up off to the side of this object, heating it so severely on one side that it starts to outgas extremely and acts as a rocket, propelling itself off course to us. That's one. But I like more the approach of a tugboat, a tug rocket that goes and nestles up next to the asteroid and fires its engines for a long time and very slowly. All you need to do is change its velocity by about 1 centimeter per second. If you do it enough in advance, it'll miss us. So anyway, it's a very fascinating field. But so you'll have a little practicum in all this coming up in the next few days.
And now let's move on to the big rock that got between us and the sun.
Yeah, great big rock, big round, nice round one.
Let's Tommy, what did you see, and where did you see it from?
I was in Madras, Oregon, and it was my first total eclipse that I've actually gotten to see. I've seen partial ones, but they were nothing in comparison to a total eclipse.
Exactly.
It's incredible. What do you call it? The corona is such a spectacular thing to get to see.
That's the atmosphere of the sun. You can never see it any other time with the naked eye, and it's different every eclipse. Depends on the state of the sun.
And the photos don't do it justice.
Yeah, no photo comes even close. You have to be there.
NASA does have some good shots of it, though.
Yeah, they're okay, but just compared to the extreme, deep, just soul-stirring, cosmic beauty.
Being
I mean,
there.
it's just the most beautiful thing you can ever see, and that's all I can say. It's indescribable.
Well, you could say more. I'm going to try to do better than that.
Okay.
Because this is radio. You try, if they weren't there, to describe it. So I was in a field in Monroe, Oregon, which is just north of Corvallis, right inside the totality zone. And a bunch of us were on a field, and there were a lot of other people on the field, and it was a perfectly beautiful sunny day. We were all in lawn chairs that had a festive atmosphere. In fact, we were playing music. I was going to play the audio from the video, but I'll do that later. And, you know, we were playing songs about the moon shadow. Maybe Jason can find that as our outro. And, you know, I don't know, here comes the sun after the eclipse finished. But as we got closer to totality, the shadows got long, and it began to feel like twilight, except it was a metallic yellow color. There was a sunrise 360 all around, sunset looking
gorgeous,
rosy glow 360 around us. And then, of course, as we got very close, the sun through these glasses looked like a crescent moon. And then as it got closer and closer, it looked like a very tiny crescent moon. And as soon as it reached totality, we all ripped off our glasses and looked at it. And yes, it was a flaming, you know, corona around a dark black circle in the sky. And the difference between that and looking at the moon or anything else is it's the middle of the morning and the sun is high in the sky, so the light is different. And it looked just uncanny and strange and slightly disturbing. Most people felt a little giddy. Some people looked for a very fast shadow that was supposed to go across the ground.
Well,
Can you explain what that was?
I missed it.
I was up on a.
I was looking up.
I was up on a little knoll or a butte to the west of where Tommy was in Madras, which is north of Bend, Oregon, and this awesome looming volcano was to our west, Mount Jefferson. And I was watching it, and when I thought it had gone into the moon's shadow, I shouted out to everybody, "I think Mount Jefferson has gone dark." But then I looked back up at the sun, this waning, teensy-weensy little thin crescent. And next time I looked over, suddenly it was just black. It was this black, hulking, huge, conical triangle, and silhouetted against this 360-degree sunset glow all the way around the horizon. And then that mountain being about 20 miles away from us, the shadow came rushing at 2,000 miles an hour.
Wow.
Across the distance between us and that mountain. And then suddenly, you know, we saw the diamond ring effect, and then that moon is the blackest thing you will ever see. The blackest, it's cutting off the source of all light. It's just this sheer frosted black against this ethereal, pearly, ghostly glow of this corona that had streamers going in several directions. And, you know, it just inspired almost an impulse to cry in me. It was just so deep. You know, it was just like nothing. I've seen 5 of them. You know, I kind of knew what to expect, but it's been a couple decades, and it just moved me to the core.
It might have been psychological, but I also felt kind of cold when it happened.
Oh, that was the thing. Just in the last couple minutes before totality, it was like the auditorium lights were inexorably dimming all over the world, and then this cold breeze came up, and it was just creepy.
You know what? My theory on why we felt creeped out by it is we viscerally know that the sun is the source of all life, and if it goes away, we're screwed. So deep in our animal beings, the fact that it got dark in the middle of the morning disturbed us slightly. We need that sun like we need the air we breathe. So I think having it going away for even 30 seconds was a little bit unnerving, and some people got giddy and some people laughed, but others just kind of went, ooh, I'm weirded out.
Instincts.
You know, I heard that Columbus actually got out of a pinch when he was captured by some unhappy natives because they were about to execute him and his crew on one of the islands he got to before he got to the mainland. And he said, the gods are angry, and if you don't let me go, I'm going to cause it to get dark in the daytime.
I think that was an eclipse of the moon.
Well, whatever. He knew it was coming. Okay,
something.
Some eclipse.
Some eclipse. Yeah.
So, Hark, he did find our Cat Stevens song, so we're going to say thank you for listening to Planet Watch.
And keep an eye on the sky,
I'm
everybody.
Rachel Ann Goodman.
Joe Jordan.
Caroline King.
Tommy Martin.
We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
If I won't have to work no more, and if I ever lose my eyes, if my colors all run dry, as if I ever lose my eyes, away, if I won't have to cry no more. Yes, I am being followed by a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow, leaping and hopping on a moon shadow, moon shadow, moon shadow. And if I ever lose my legs, I won't moan and I won't beg. As if I ever lose my legs, away, if I won't have to walk no more.
KSCO,
And if I
Santa Cruz.
ever lose my mouth.
CBS News, I'm Pam Coulter. Parts of South Texas have gotten more than 2 feet of rain, flooding hundreds of streets, closing airports, and leading to more than 1,000 water rescues. CBS News meteorologist David Parkinson says the situation won't get better for a while.
We have at least 2 to 3 days of heavy rain, and then even beyond that, things don't dry out probably until at least the end of the week. So the flooding really won't be going down anytime soon, and people really need to be prepared if they're